synopsis. We rate these now. So we have space colonizers come face to face with the most terrifying life form in the universe while scavenging the deep ends of a derelict space station. I'm going to give that synopsis an 8 out of 10, Ricky Flex. It's a little vague, but it's simple. And this movie was pretty simple. You know, it was very easy to follow, even if it's building on many homages and honoring other alien films. So, Rotten Tomatoes, 81%. Critic score, 86%. Audience score. IMDb clocking in 7.5 out of 10. Ricky Flex,
Strong.
Alien Romulus. This is taking place in the Alien timeline between 1979's Alien and 1986's Aliens. Okay? So smack dab 20 years after the events of Alien. Your initial reactions, what do you think of Romulus?
I really liked it. Walking out of the theater, there was a good buzz about myself walking out of the theater. And I think most of the audience would agree or was similar. I think overall, this definitely was more like back to the Alien type of movie. Not deep, not in the direction where Prometheus and Covenant went. This is more like, oh, we're on a spaceship. There's aliens here. We got to get out of here, right? Back to the simple roots. And there was a lot of nostalgia here. Some good, some bad, maybe more bad than good, some would say. But overall, very good movie. Simple, and it did turn up the action in the second half of the movie too, which I liked, and some standout performances. So overall, had a little bit of everything that you wanted to see in a franchise, action-oriented type of alien franchise.
I thought it was very good as well, Ricky Flex. I had a great time watching this movie with you. We had a great crowd. There was a lot of fanfare for Alien fans. You talk about the ones that were wearing T-shirts going into the theater. There was a lot of oohs and ahs, usually in a positive manner while we were watching this. This was something where I thought the beginning was very slow, first 45 minutes. But as I was doing my watch of the Alien franchise this week, there was a pattern I was recognizing. The first 45 minutes to an hour, rarely anything good happens. Like any juiciness. There's very minimal scares. There's very minimal deaths. It usually is something where the director makes you wait for the moment, and we waited for the moment here, Ricky Flex. When we had that first face hug, the whole crowd said, holy shit. Right after that, it was around the 45-minute marker, I want to say. And then you felt like you were in it once again. This movie, you got to know a couple different characters, very surface level, but you once again have an ensemble you typically see. Some very good acting performances inside that ensemble, but I agree with you. This is very nice setting-wise, inside of a spaceship again, claustrophobic. We're not going to explore a bunch of shit. We're not learning about the engineers. We're not just going to learn about the origins of the xenomorphs. We're just in a haunted house, in a haunted space station. And you got these young, naive kids that are looking to steal a couple cryo chambers. Simple as that, that's all you need, I was really, really impressed with this. But what do you think about the setting here, Ricky Flex, right? Following canonically after Alien, we're back in it.
Yeah, we're back in the Nostromo, right? And I again, that's kind of a spoiler, I guess. But whatever, I'll move on. No spoilers right now. Besides that little one. But this definitely leaned towards Fede Alvarez as the director and writer here, his horror roots, right? Back, and also, like I mentioned, the Alien 1979, with the ship, closed space, grittier, more grounded, despite being in space. And versus what Aliens 1986 James Cameron just felt huge. You're on a planet, open space a lot of the time, huge blockbuster. This was just more horror roots, and that just aligns with the writer-director, Fede Alvarez. And I didn't have too many jump scares. I did jump at one scene, and I don't know if you were sitting next to me. I don't know if you remember this. I did jump, and I'm like, oh. And it was when they were on the ship, and the first person who dies, spoiler alert, but everyone
Wait,
dies.
are we doing spoilers or not? You're like snip, snap, snip, snap.
But everyone, a bunch of people die in Alien movies. That's not a spoiler. But before that, she grabs something and I jumped because I was just expecting something and nothing happened. That was the only time I really jumped. It wasn't really too many jump scares. It was more just Alien franchise scares, which I thought were good. So it wasn't like cheap scares, is all I'm saying. I thought it was really well done. So overall, like, yeah, I totally like the horror roots here. It worked well.
They kind of rock you to sleep a little bit in the first 45 minutes here. And like for me, when that face hugger popped out, it's like, wow, we are back. And it's also a group of people like that are very normal. They're not like these high-tech scientists, you know? These are just they're not military, right? They're just normal people trying to get away from this planet where the company is forcing them for years and years of service. They just want to see the sunlight. They're very average, common day folk, and that's just a crew that's like the truckers, like common everyday folk that you see, space truckers in 1979's Alien. This is a movie that's taking place right after that. Okay, so I was all in on that. And going into the cast a little bit, this is a group that's kind of led by Kaylee Spaney in terms of name recognition. There's somewhat familiar faces. David Johnson, we're gonna talk about a little bit. Ricky's boy from Industry, and I thought he was absolutely spectacular in this. I thought the other members of the cast, I wouldn't even call them formidable. They're kind of just like there. They don't really do much for me. I feel like there's some overacting with specifically the character of Bjorn, and he's kind of like the douchebag of the group. I think he's played by Spike Fern. Spike matches up with the way he was acting in this movie. Isabella Merced was actually pretty good too. Now that I'm thinking about it,
DC.
um, but a very young cast, like average age, got to be around 30 or maybe even a little bit younger. You know, they kind of went young, naive, right? Think they could take on the world type of mentality. It works for the most part, but I did kind of miss like the ensembles that you get in Covenant and the ones that you get in Prometheus and even Aliens and Alien. Like those four movies, you always look forward to seeing like certain actors on screen in smaller roles. Usually they're good at picking like niche actors for those type of things, like a Bill Paxton like showing up, right? Obviously in Aliens, you get Danny McBride and like Alien Covenant. It's like, wow, this guy's in this movie, blah 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 blah. You don't really have that here. But Ricky Flex, before we get into like specific performances, I guess what do you think of the cast overall?
Yeah, you said it right there. Relatively unknown, young cast versus alien movies for the most part, and specifically recent movies, Prometheus and Covenant. They have a couple big stars and then formidable like seasoned vets, well-known actors around surrounding them. Right? Covenant, you have Fassbender, then you have like Billy Crudup, Danny McBride, like even James Franco is like kind of in that movie. Deleted scenes, he's on a lot of it, but
Mm-hmm.
and then a bunch of other recognizable faces.
Fun,
Prometheus, Idris Elba and Charlize Theron are in it for God's sakes to go along with Fassbender,
like
Guy
Guy Pearce.
Pearce.
Yeah.
Like it's so many like, and then here it's just like Kaylee Spaney, yes, Priscilla end of last year, Civil War this year, and then this. But like when she was cast, she was not in any of those. And like David Johnson, probably, and Isabella Merced are like probably the only other two recognizable. But like to who really? A much smaller audience. So they went unknown, younger, and I did like it where it was kind of a refresher. And with a lot of things in this movie that paid homage or felt like we've seen before in other Alien movies, that was something that we didn't. So I did like that aspect. And did it work at times? Did it not work at times? Maybe. But overall, I thought it was nice and refreshing.
Do you feel like I saw this comparison online? Someone was comparing this to The Force Awakens, where it's like almost like too repetitive of what we've seen from the franchise before. It's got young, kind of unknown actors, but it feels like there's a sense of rejuvenation in the franchise. Do you feel like Force Awakens is a fair comp for this movie?
I don't hate that. I just feel like Force Awakens was directly like they looked at A New Hope and just like took that same plot structure and like they took the script and took those beats and they just like rewrote the characters. That's what it felt like. Here it's like, all right, we know like, oh, let's just take the idea from Alien, make it, like a younger cast and put our own twists on it. So it felt like, oh, like okay, it's not directly a one-to-one like a Force Awakens, but it's something similar. So I don't hate the comparison because what else are you going to compare it to?
I feel like you're right that The Force Awakens, it's more of like we're taking the structure of the movie and then we're implanting it. This movie kind of felt like it was kneeling at the altar of Ridley Scott at some points and at James Cameron for some points, where it's not a beat for beat like Force Awakens and A New Hope. This is more like remember this line, we're going to use this line. Remember this frame, remember how this character was standing in this moment, we're going to do that here. Remember this creature you haven't seen in a long time, we're going to do it in the same exact way, right? It just felt like it was smaller moments. It wasn't taking an exact blueprint, but I did feel like there was it was kind of excessive at times. It was
It
kind of
was.
excessive and almost cringy in a couple moments. Well, I know we'll talk about it more with spoilers, but did the did the homages and did the homages impact your experience watching the movie at all?
It did. Without a doubt, it did. And some of them were fine. Like some of them were like, okay. And looking back to like rewatching, I think every single Alien movie, like that we're gonna rank here later. I rewatched all of them, and they all, besides Alien, do pay some sort of homage or like yeah, some in some respect link to the other one in some sort of nostalgic homage way. Just this one was like off the charts how much they were doing it. Maybe because it's Fede Alvarez doing it, and again, he's not young, but like he's a younger director versus a freaking James Cameron or a Ridley Scott who's 80 years old, right? But he's like just again kneeling, like you would say, kneeling to Ridley Scott at times. But like I would say for this one, it was more with the smaller actions, like if you said a piece of dialogue or a couple action sequences or a couple like quote unquote scares. But for me, like here in the story, they tried to do a little bit more here. Not like Force Awakens, where it's like, oh, 1-to-1 jet you're on Tatooine or whatever. Like it's not like that. This is like, oh, like they're trying to build this relationship between Kaylee Spaney and her brother and asterisks. You're trying to do this relationship like someone's pregnant. Like you're trying to do a bunch of different things here versus like an Alien. Like it's basically, oh, these guys, these pilots aren't getting paid. No one's listening to Sigourney Weaver, and then there's an infection. Like there's not really much else. There's not much story. That's like
No.
simple. Here it's like simple but with some wrinkles attached to it with the story.
Yeah, like the beats of it's like the space truckers and Alien feel like they're getting gypped by the company too. So it's like we're taking that type of feeling, you're inserting it here. And then the AI, it's that's where it's like that's where I found a little bit of a difference compared to like Fassbender in Covenant, where he's like at the beginning that scene with Guy Pearce, which is an amazing scene where he's like, who created you, right? And like you created me, like what do I owe you now? And Guy Pearce makes him grab the tea, and basically he notices from that point on, this guy, I was meant, I was built and created to serve this person. But what if I don't want to do that? What if I want to have free will? It's a deeper type of movie, but this one's more like the choice of serving the company who has treated this humanoid terribly, right? And it was put in a trash heap, was an adopted part of Rain, the character played by Kaylee Spaney, her and her father's family. And then you have, does he serve the company or the family? And you see him going back and forth. It's not difficult to follow, but I just like it was a different type of direction for the AI. And we spent two movies where people don't know how to feel about a movie that is all about AI, especially in these type of times. I thought it was simple, like we talked about. Um, there's another homage we're going to talk about when we get into spoilers, because I think there was also something done in poor taste for this movie that I thought was really, really tough. It was tough, I think, for um, Alien fans to see. And I think it really has them up in arms. But I did want to talk about Kaylee Spaney because I thought she was awesome in this movie. She is Hollywood's like kind of next it girl. She's had an incredible last year and a half, like 12-month calendar year. You're talking about her and Priscilla alongside O'Lordy playing the wife of Elvis Presley. You have her in Civil War alongside Kirsten Dunst, an A24 movie that's one of the highest grossing A24 movies of all time. And now you have her leading an Alien Romulus movie that has kind of given newfound energy, right, to this iconic franchise. She's on a roll, Ricky Flex, and I just saw that Knives Out 3 just finished shooting. She's in that movie too. She's kind of an unstoppable force. I didn't find her. There was some like shots of her in this movie that they're trying to tell you like she kind of supposed to remind you of Sigourney Weaver, of Ripley, but she's not like jacked. It's not kneeling at the altar of like Sigourney Weaver by saying Kaylee Spaney is this powerful heroine. I didn't really get that vibe, but I thought she was certainly great. And I think the best part of her performance was the chemistry with her and Andy, the AI, the David Johnson character. I thought their emotion towards one another very evident on screen. I thought they were the best performers by a country mile. I think they actually elevated each other.
I thought they were the best performers easily, also most screen time. I was just saying with Kaylee Spinney, I agree with your sentiments around the Sigourney Weaver comp. just not enough like like there were plenty of heroic acts and like supposed to be those moments of like in the climax, and like it's on her basically to pull off these miraculous like escapes from these xenomorphs,
Takes a
right?
lot of strength what she's doing in the last part of this movie. Takes
Right,
a
like
lot of strength.
crazy stuff. But like it's just when you look back, it's just like it's not Sigourney Weaver, and they're trying to make her like that. It just wasn't. And again, she was good in this movie. It just didn't have the same impact for me. And we'll talk David Johnson. Like he was for me the best part of this
Yeah,
movie.
I think he was my favorite performer. I know he was my favorite performer, and he kind of does two acting jobs here, right? Depending on what his directive is, whether he's serving the company or he's trying to protect Rain. Like he has two different ways, and he very distinctly acts during those two. And when he makes that switch into serving the company, he was a boss. He was so good in that type of role where he would just get things done at all costs, weighing the mathematical like probabilities of certain situations. And you know what? I think this is a pretty pro AI movie because every decision that David Johnson's character made, I agreed with. I'm like, hey, we might have lost somebody, but we need to lose that person, right? These are the stakes, the high stakes that we're at right now. Every time that he made a decision, he got something done. I'm like, this guy should be leading everybody. He's pulling all the right strings right now. I watched this. I'm like, this is a good movie for AI. For all the AI lovers, this is a movie that you would like.
It's like the rewatching the Alien movies. It's like, oh, the AI is always driven by the company. It's always the company's direction.
Mm.
That's the AI's vision or their mission in life is to follow the company's orders. So it's kind of like, oh, the AI bad decisions in the previous movies to make us hate the AI. It's really you hate the company, you hate the humans behind the AI. You shouldn't hate the AI. But in this movie, it's like it's just the AI making the decisions and it is kind of like a human like partly right, and we're pretty much rooting for this AI the entire movie instead of like being I'll straight up say villain and no like a villain in Prometheus and Covenant. You are not rooting for the AI whatsoever.
The
So
villain.
yeah, straight up villain. So for me it's different, and again this guy is playing like a Forrest Gump type of AI in one aspect, that he's doing the complete opposite
He's
genius
like disabled.
David type of Fassbender role. So great performance. And again, that's like one of the things why I love Prometheus. I love Covenant. Just like this aspect of the franchise that they lean into in the recent movies, I think is just spot on incredible. I think it's something that the other movies I think lack. Looking back on it now, I was like, wow, if they could have levered the AI usage in the older movies, wow. But they didn't have a Fassbender on their side. And Dave Johnson, like again, this was awesome, awesome performance. So I love this aspect, and I love Dave Johnson in this.
Yeah, when the directive changed, all of a sudden he became like an Olympic sprinter. Like he was insanely fast. He was coming in with the high hands. He had like super strength. He was a superhero. And before that, he was like this socially awkward humanoid, you know? And then to see him like flip a switch and then also come back at different points and go flip flop, that was pretty incredible to see. Where else do we want to go, Ricky Flex? Let's talk about some scares. I thought this movie was decently scary. I thought the shock factor in the third act was I was freaked out by what I was seeing and the different like characters that were popping up on the screen. Was I necessarily scared about them? No, but some of these deaths, they're kind of cool. There's the anti-gravity that they introduced. They utilized the acid coming from the xenomorphs, right? Floating xenomorphs. Then you have like heads getting split. This was a pretty gory movie, Ricky Flex, and I like it because the last two movies have been kind of philosophical. Except no. Actually, Covenant was scary as shit.
Covenant was
Covenant is
pretty
scary as shit.
badass.
Actually, I take that back. It wasn't as scary as Covenant. Covenant was scary as shit,
Yes.
bro. Covenant is, yes, and we'll get to that when we talk about the rankings. But I thought it brought us the classic like xenomorph deaths, and obviously gives us the burst and everything. But I think it introduced something kind of cool with the acid drip.
The anti gravity, acid dripping, or blood, whatever you want to call it, that was a really good addition. That was clever. That's what you bring with a horror director with fresh ideas instead of like a blockbuster director or someone that literally created the franchise. New ideas, fresh perspectives. That's why again, what I said off the top, the Fede Alvarez writer director here, I thought did a really good job. Again, maybe too good of a job paying homage and just being nostalgic, but again, being refreshing. And I thought that was one of the aspects where the action sequences, where when you watch 7 Alien movies in a row like we've done this weekend, it can get kind of repetitive at times. But he brought a little something fresh, which I liked.
I think we should at this point go into some spoilers. Do you think we should give a ranking now, or should we wait till the spoilers to give the ranking?
We can wait
Rating,
till after the spoilers.
because the spoilers are gonna be the point where I kind of have some criticisms about the movie, and it starts with the homages here, Ricky Flex. Let's just list some of the homages that happen. Okay, Um, you have some references to aliens where you have, I believe the alongside Rain, you have like her like love interest, which was Archie Renault. You have Archie showing Rain how to use a gun that's like mimicking frame by frame what you see with Michael Biehn and Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. You have David Johnson delivering the uh, "Get away from her, you bitch," and you have him with the awkward delivery there, the AI delivery that you would like type into Chat GBT and they would spit it back to you. You also have the inclusion of a engineer at the end of this movie that obviously makes people think of Prometheus, and obviously someone that looks absolutely terrifying, like a 10, like I would say larger than 10 foot. I would say 15 feet. That's coming in birth and then killing his own mother with Isabella Merced. And then other scenes you think about, uh, you have Ian Holmes quasi return because he passed away. He played Ash in the original Alien, and you don't find out he's AI until the third act of Alien, and he makes a return here. Obviously, not him. They pull a little Rogue One, Grand Moff Tarkin, and they have him here not playing Ash, but playing a guy named Rook, who's it's kind of like how you had Fassbender playing David and Walter in Covenant. You have kind of the same thing happening here. But any other ones that I missed, Ricky? Homages like directly
We
from the
mentioned the
books?
Nostromo off the top, so the ship.
I thought it was like
Um,
Romulus and Remus.
that was a part of the ship. Like that's the
Okay.
part where they had to go to, like, and they had to travel throughout the entire ship to get there. Um, you mentioned the Prometheus thing with the black goo. I forget what that's called. Yeah, I think we hit the big ones.
A couple things. I'll start with the smaller stuff. I hated David Johnson saying, "Get away from her, you bitch." I thought that was, I know it's delivered weird because he's a robot, but my biggest beef with it is that this is a movie that's taking place after Alien. Aliens takes place, I think, 37 years like in the timeline of Alien. So Sigourney Weaver says at the end of Aliens. That line hasn't even been uttered yet, and they drop it during this movie. You know, I get it. It's a fan moment. People are gonna like do the Leo DiCaprio snapping at the screen. I just didn't like the inclusion of it, and that hasn't even happened yet, literally in the world.
Right. I just didn't like it because it's the Leo moment, and it's not like it's Batman. When Batman, every time he's with Commissioner Gordon or doing an interrogation or something, or like talking to somebody, and they turn away and he leaves. You have to have that in every single Batman project. But this isn't like a line that you have to have in every single Alien movie. It's just iconic for that one movie, that one time. That's why
Yeah.
I didn't really like it.
What, and like David swearing just sounds weird, and him saying it in that delivery was intentionally weird. I just didn't like that at all. I think it's a weak reference when you're just showing Archie alongside Rain how to shoot a gun. That's similar to Michael Biehn and Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. Like that's one part of Aliens that's really underdeveloped is actually like their sexual tension. Like doesn't really lead to anything. They're really more concerned with the relationship between uh, the daughter, not the daughter, the young child and Ripley rather than that. So I'm like, you're really not selling me on this either. And I just think it's kind of corny. It's like, okay, they're standing there. Great. You guys did it. The worst one was the Ian Holm recreation. First off, it looked terrible. Like it just didn't look good. It was pretty jarring to look at. The CGI, I think, was pretty messy. There's a lot of cool practical things that were in this movie. Like the xenomorphs, you could tell like they were actual helmets. You could tell they were there. You know, there were some really cool scenes with like the practicality, the one-on-one, the face-to-face people are having, characters are having. And there's also one great scene we didn't even talk about, one sequence, the water sequence, when you have like three of the members of the crew that are trapped inside of the ship and they have to be saved. And there's xenomorphs crawling everywhere. Uh, but that CGI, that's something that hasn't aged well about Grand Moff Tarkin. Is that Rogue One? People are like, oh, it doesn't look that bad. As years go by, you're like, it looks pretty bad, and that guy was dead. And there's options for the Alien franchise. They don't have to use that looking character, that looking actor. You don't have to do that. You don't have to pull CGI there. You really could have pulled Fassbender if you wanted to, right? You could have just used him in that type of sequence or pick a random person. Just have someone else, you know, or someone that resembles Bishop, or cast someone that looks like Ash from the first movie. You didn't have to use it. That's where it felt like we're kneeling at the altar of Ridley Scott because it just wasn't necessary, Ricky.
It was again similar to the bitch line. It's just fan service. You get someone that's a familiar face. They did ask the family, like they got permission to use it, like
Yeah, yeah.
they whatever. But like, I think for me, I agree with you. It did not look good, and I think they could have done a better job kind of hiding some of the things overall. But it's also like you don't even have to bring back a Fassbender. You could just do a new person. You get a new English person or whatever. Like just do a brand new type like you did with Dave Johnson in this movie. You just do another AI person, just a different look. Could have easily done that. So I agree with you, totally for fan service. But I will say I see why they did it. Besides, as in not the specifically the Ian Holm, but they needed a villain that wasn't the xenomorph in this, because everybody on the human crew was kind of like lockstep together, as in the same vision. There was obviously people that didn't like the AI for AI because it's AI, and like vice versa, people that didn't like each other, but everyone had the same purpose. Like in every single Alien movie, there has to be a human slash AI that's kind of like the other villain to the xenomorph, right? And it can't just be the company. It has to be someone like kind of represented the company in some way. So I understand bringing back or doing that path, but just do it a different person. Just do it a different person. Don't lean. There's already so much fan service in this. You didn't have to bring back Ian Holm.
They have the layers of villains. Like you have the literal villains, and you have the people like they don't know that they're villains because they're robots at points. That's what you have with Alien, you know? That's where it gets a little complex, you know, it can get a little sketchy. I think we should talk about the 7'7" actor that played the engineer. Do you have this guy's name up, Ricky?
I saw it today. I don't have his name up though.
All right, I have the cast up here. Yeah, Robert. Oh my God, I can't even pronounce his name. Robert Bobrovsky.
He's like
Spelled.
7'5".
I think he's 7'7".
7'7".
He's a 7'7". I think where does he play basketball, dude? He plays, I think, in the Eastern Bloc or something. Like he plays out in Europe, and he is the his name in the IMDb. He says it says he's playing an Offspring. That was a nuts scene to have Isabella Merced, easy to telegraph. Right when she said she was pregnant, like in the beginning, you're like, oh my God, she's not having a normal kid. You already
Yep.
knew right when she said she was pregnant. And when she has the birth, and then you see this absolute gargantuan, great framing, great. I also wanted to compliment this movie. The way it was shot was pretty unbelievable. Like there were some really cool shots, whether it be the floating xenomorphs, the looking up at the 10-foot monster, or it's like just like when you're going through the spaceship and you have like those yellow rays of light that are flashing. It
Mm.
looks so sick. Like Fede Alvarez nailed it in that regard. But this was scary as shit. I was just looking at it and I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this right now. And that's where you're like, you're missing other than the AI references and beats that you kind of see from Prometheus and Covenant, you don't really have any other like direct references until you see that thing. You're like, oh my God, engineer. That was crazy,
Right.
Ricky. What were your reactions?
So you knew the pregnancy was going to be a bad birth, right? She takes the black goo in the neck. Bad decision. Even after saying let's not do this, she does it out of whim because she just doesn't feel good. She's desperate. It did the classic Alien thing where you think the movie's over, but then it still has 20 more minutes to go, and it's just an extra plot line going or an extra action sequence at the end of the movie. Where it's like, oh, this movie should have ended at an hour 40 and not 2 hours. And for this one, I felt like this was completely unnecessary. I don't know. I didn't like it. I thought it was an eye roller or a hands up. I felt the movie, if it ended before that, I was like, wow, that was a really good, clean movie. But then it just felt long. It was like, oh, we're doing another escape. It's like, oh my god.
I literally feel that way about every Alien movie, though. That's what I was noticing after watching all of these. It's usually it takes a long time to get going, and they try to make up for it on the back end with like it almost feels like bonus 10 minutes of action and violence and gore
They do it on
and
purpose.
holy shit moments. It's like they're making up for not having it in the first 45 minutes because you can't have an hour and 40-minute movie where the first hour is nothing and you only have 40 minutes of action. People are gonna be like, oh my god, this is look at all like the time we had nothing going on in the movie. It wants to feel like you're going home with something that was worthwhile seeing, right? You want a reaction as you're leaving the theater. That definitely felt like that decision was made in this movie. And I was complimenting the way this movie was shot, and I think it looked good for the most part. I like the practicality with the xenomorphs, but in the last 15 minutes where Kaylee Spaney is pulling off these incredible action stunts. She is luring this offspring to its presumed death or goes into the wide open space. You can't really see what's happening.
It's
It's
tough.
it's too dark. You don't know what she's latching onto. It feels like a miracle after a miracle is happening, and that's where that 10-minute sequence at the end with the reveal of the alien, I wouldn't have mind if it actually just looked good. But I couldn't tell anything that was happening on the screen. And I was shocked because when you're inside of the spaceship, it was awesomely shot. And all of a sudden, everything went out the window. It felt like they just kind of said, yeah, the movie's done. This is kind of whatever. This is icing on the cake. We kind of throw in the towel on this one. I just didn't like the way that last 10-15 minutes was shot.
Yeah, to me, it felt like, oh, we ran out of budget a little bit. We kind of have to cover up how this guy looks a little bit, the special effects, digital effects. That's kind of how it felt to me. 'Cause I completely agree with you.
He was funky looking, dude. But the way it was shot was cool. Like looking up at it, like wow, he looks even bigger. That's how you look at 7'7" person, make him look like they're 20 feet tall. But everything else is bad.
Right. Because like if you think back to like Prometheus with the engineers, that looks incredible. Like it's so specific and detailed. Like the engineers versus this is just like you can't even see them. It's like it's purposely darker and blurrier so you can't see them because they didn't have the budget. That's how it felt to me.
The engineers, I love the references and the memes where people say it looks like Squidward, handsome
Yeah.
Squidward, because that's pretty spot on.
Yeah. You know what was another thing I was kind of, I don't know, you're sitting next to me, so it's the same theater. We were in a Dolby Atmos, right? But Dolby sound. I thought the sound mix was kind of poor in this movie.
The
Hard to
dialogue was very
understand some
quiet.
dialogue.
Dialogue was quiet, especially in the beginning of the movie. It was making me very upset because we don't know who these characters are. And this is integral dialogue at the beginning. So we know exactly their names, what's the point of them being there, and what are their relationships. And I was like leaning in as if like that was gonna help me here. You
Yeah,
know?
like I felt like when we were in Tenet in IMAX, like trying to like lean in and try to understand that. And then literally 2 days later after seeing Tenet, I saw Tenet in that theater, Dolby Theater, and I understood every single word. And I didn't have to lean in like I did. So for this movie to not get it right, and Tenet got it right in Dolby, I think is a problem.
I couldn't tell. I hate when we review movies and if we say that and it's more about our theater and not the sound mixing. But I think when it all comes down to it, we have a very reliable theater and Dolby is Dolby. Like that should be effective for sound. We're gonna I think I'm with you. I've seen nobody talking about this though. That's
I
why I'm
saw
like,
I saw a
no,
couple I saw a couple
some people were
things
talking about the low dialogue.
about like they couldn't understand sometimes what people were saying.
Yes, that's a problem. You can't understand sometimes what people are doing. You can't literally see it, and you can't listen. Those are two key senses you need to go enjoy a movie, Ricky Flex. Let's get some scores.
80. 80 out of 100.
Okay, I'm a 71. 71 out of 100. That does it for our review of Alien Romulus.